this one. So we are on chapter 8, and we're going to do, let's bring this up, and the shared screen. So we're on chapter 8. We have our summary. Whoops, that's not quite, we don't get kind of ahead of the game here. Listening well, Art of Empathic Understanding summary. So this is our summary of chapter 8. He starts off with a quote by Alice Miller. Listening is not merely talking, though even this is beyond most of our powers. It means taking a vigorous, I don't know what that, did I misspell it? Human interest in what is being told us. You can listen like a blank wall or like a splendid auditorium where every sound comes back fuller and richer. So he starts with that quote. He then goes into, the author, Bill Miller, says, forming reflections is a doing path towards being. So in a sense, like being is that culture of empathy, I would say. Reflection is a statement, not a question. Going deeper through reflections and, you know, over time kind of add more summary points if anybody has one. Does anybody have a summary point that you think that should be in there? Barsha?
I'm just reading this up. Question places a demand on the person for an answer. It's like a micro interrogation. Like, I think this we need to keep in our mind.
Okay, do you want to start? We're going to go into empathic listening now. So would you like to start and select who you want to speak to and share what you just said? And we have about half an hour.
All right, I'm here.
I don't have much because I'm just halfway through. I didn't read the entire chapter, but what pointed out to me is like reflection is not asking question. And why should we not ask question? Because if we ask question, it places a demand. It's like we are demanding something from someone. So it's like what do you say? We are interrogating someone in a very subtle way. So, and also it's highlighted that when we ask question, there's a stress. The difference between asking question and just saying a statement is the difference of having a stress in the end word. It's like, you are angry with your mother? And statement is, you are angry with your mother. So it's like, you are angry with your mother? It's like interrogation, like, oh, it pushes the person back.
Can I reflect back what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
So you really enjoyed the fact that there is that focus on the inflection, and that you're noticing how you don't want to have that energy of interrogating or even putting any form of judgment onto how things are reflected. So you really enjoy the fact that there's that focus on the intent of how it's said, and how in English, you know, a certain way we say it is a question, a certain way isn't. And you could say the exact same thing both ways, but it feels more effective if you do it just as a statement towards the person.
Yeah, it's like the intonation, the sound, the phonetic, the science of phonetic, and the impression that the phonetics places in one's psychology, and also the way it transmits into one's emotion, like the sound, the science of sound, the effect of sound.
Yeah, you're really appreciating how intent is expressed through that sound and through that way that words are said in communicating with people.
Yeah, just the discoveries, small discoveries that I'm making. Yeah.
You're appreciating just the little things, even the little things that could tweak how you're doing things.
Yeah.
Makes it better for you.
Yeah, I feel heard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Celia, can you listen? Hi.
Hi.
thinking in particularly because I read this chapter last week, and then I went through it again right before the meeting, that I'm sitting with how minute judgments can be in speaking to people. In particular, someone who's already triggered, or someone that doesn't know you or doesn't know why you're coming to talk to them. In particular, anyone who if you'd walk up to someone in the street and say, hey, can we do some empathy? Automatically, they're gonna look for every little microcosm of every little word you say, and basically, try to work it out. So I'm really enjoying the fact that we're getting specifically down to even how do we say sentences, like word choice, the intent of the words you're saying, whether it's a question, whether it's an answer, and the more and more specific you can get with that stuff, the better.
Right. So you were really pleased to read that in this chapter 8, that indeed can become so minute, so specific, how people say things and how they perceive it and how you express it. And in this chapter, he really addresses that, and that really pleases you. Yeah.
Well, in particular, I'm realizing, because I was speaking to my mentor maybe 10 months ago or so, and she brought up this research that she'd been looking into, where there's actual research where there's a recording of like a social worker or someone going out in the field and engaging people, and then they ask 1,000 people to watch that video and to say when is the moment that the interaction went bad. And just the smallest things really can ruin like 2 hours of work. Like in the first 3 minutes, you say a word in the wrong tone, and then 2 hours of work are down the toilet, no matter what. Yeah. And I've actually seen that happen recently at my own job.
Right.
I was out with someone, and they said an honest question, but in a tone that they didn't want to say. Yeah. And now that patient, every time they see this person, this guy's ready for a fight, pretty much.
Right.
So it's really making me think of, if we want to do this work, like if I'm sitting at an empathy tent in the middle of Manhattan, and I say the one word wrong, then, it's going to be a problem,
Right. So you feel like it really has to be specific in order for you to do it good, to really help someone and not create more havoc. And even in this research that you talked about, this lady shows that, and it becomes more and more clear to you that you have to be specific.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bill, would you listen to me? Yeah. Thank you. It was one of the chapters that I had not much to say. I even had something, I love this, and that was, when you visit someone else's home, there's no need to rearrange the furniture, just sit and listen. And it's one of the first things in this book that I really love this, wrote next to it. Yeah.
So you didn't have much to say. It was a short chapter and short, but you really liked the comment about visiting somebody's house and not having to rearrange their furniture, and the analogy that makes to listening to someone and trying to see where the furniture in their mind is.
Right. To really take a person the way they are, and for where they are at that moment, not go ahead or not slowing them down or not saying something that has nothing to do with it. Yeah. Yeah.
So a real, other person focused idea where you're really trying to experience what they're experiencing.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel heard.
Okay. Let's see. Varsha? Okay. Varsha's muted, I think. I like the chapter. I like the way it integrates with the sort of diminution of yourself and opening up to the other person. That's why I see all these techniques. Earlier, when we said towards a way of being, I think he takes and he calls these are reflective listening skills that then build to what he calls empathetic understanding. And he makes the distinction that these are skills that you can practice, but empathetic understanding is something that you internally generalize and take out to the world. So that's a sort of another level, that the reflective listening is the tool, and then the empathetic understanding is what you build with the tool. I should stop there.
Yeah, because it's a lot.
Yeah.
So what I heard is that you like the chapter and how it teaches you how to open up yourself to another person, and your understanding is that reflective listening is the tool towards empathic understanding. Like reflecting listening is the thing to practice, and the discoveries that you make out of it, you internalize it, and then you become that being of empathic being.
Thank you. I feel very heard. That was not easy. And the only thing I will say is that I agree with it, but this is what I think Miller is saying. He
yes,
says,
like your understanding after reading the book.
Yeah, that's how he's organized it. Thank you. I feel heard. Thank you, Varsha.
Yes, you're welcome. Edwin.
Okay.
Yes. May I talk to you?
Yes. You don't even need to ask.
I'm practicing asking because I don't know how. I just play demand. Please listen to me. It's a conscious participation.
So I'm hearing that you're requesting that I listen to you. You're wanting acknowledgement, and that you're wanting to practice asking people.
Yes. Yeah, it's very hard for me.
And it's difficult for you to ask people to listen to you.
Yes.
And so maybe this is good practice.
Yeah. It's yeah. Anytime. Yes, I just want to reflect what Peter was discussing with Celia, how about words, like how people say and how the listeners reciprocate or respond to how the words are being said. I so agree with it, and that's my problem too. Like, because like I'm not a diplomatic person, and I talk very straight, and because of my personality, it literally hits person so hard, straight like a sword, you know. So, so reflecting back on my personality, I have learned like just don't tell people whatever, just ask and take their permission. If this is what, so this is one of the strategy that I use to avoid conflict, which is very hard for me. And also, I think when I ask people if I take their permission, so it's like more softer and more gentler. Yeah, but yeah.
Well, let me reflect back. If so, you're kind of building on what Peter said, and you're looking at when you're very direct in your way, and you speak to people, and it's like a sword going into them, and you just notice that they kind of react to that, and it can cause kind of conflict. Yeah. So you've been developing another strategy where you sort of make a request and ask, is this okay? And you do more question asking to create sort of a softer way of relating and not so direct in a way that would create conflict.
Yes. Although this is my personality of being straight, but when someone poses the same thing on me, I'm like atom bomb and blast, because like, you know, two similar poles don't attract, they repel. So I have so many experiences like when people just tell me, order, do this, do that, I'm like super, super bad and super violent, or I don't know, it's just not my thing, because if I'm like that, I need somebody who's opposite. Like, you know what I mean?
So I think what I'm hearing is that you can be very direct, very demanding in a sense, and that you're trying to change that. But if somebody is that way towards you, that you really respond strongly, is that it? And then you really kind of get a conflict, because you don't want to be people being demanding of you.
Yeah. So this is all I relate to Peter, what he was saying, how people react and respond. I have so many experiences when, personal experience, and I would be interested in watching the video that Peter was saying about. Yes, and I also think when you ask people, take permission, it also imposes a respect towards them. So this is what I'm trying. Like when I talk about respect, giving respect. So this is one of my way that I'm practicing giving respect. However small the person could be, like it could be a child of 4-year-old, like my nephew. So I will just ask him what he likes rather than impose my choice on him or my husband's choice on him, People like just tell kids, do this, do that, but rather ask them about their choice, like giving freedom of expression, giving freedom of choice, because every individual is different. So just acknowledging the fact that every human is different. So the best way is to ask.
Mm-hmm. So you're looking at how you relate to people instead of being demanding with them, telling them what to do. That you've been trying to develop an approach that is more asking them, sort of making requests of them, and then asking if they want to say something and asking them questions. So just not being so power over demanding with them.
Yeah, I see
that as a strategy, as a way of relating, trying to.
Yeah, and also a way to respect others. Yeah, respecting others, respecting their individuality, giving them choice of like freedom of expression and freedom of choice, because every human is different.
Oh yeah, you had mentioned that. This was a way of you showing respect to them and giving them a choice whether they want to respond or not.
Yeah.
And kind of seeing their uniqueness.
Yeah. I feel heard.
Okay. Then I'll speak to Peter, if that's okay. Our request. Okay. I was appreciating what you were saying, that this chapter is getting a little bit more into the nuances of, there's all these subtle nuances of how we speak and sort of subtle energies, and there's a lot to it. Yeah.
So you're really appreciating just that nuanced, like practice style, that you're really getting to the meat and potatoes of the little specific things that are needed to be empathetic.
Yeah, and how to learn from that. There's a sense of becoming better at being empathic. And there's a lot of nuances in that, and that sense of the subtleties of the energy that's happening, like you're saying, one little word can, and then it just sets off this whole cascade, and I've seen that in mediation too. You're mediating, things are going well, and then one thing happens that the whole thing kind of blows up, and you have to rebuild trust. So I guess maybe a component of that is trust, right? If there's a lot of trust in the relationship, you can say these things and it just kind of dissipates. But if there's low trust, it's things can kind of blow up more easily.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're really reveling in the fact that if you're in these serious situations where there's not that trust that you want to be building, and it falls apart, you want to be mindful, like where was that point? Like what happened so that I can build the trust I need to build so that this works?
Yeah, and I think the other part is that culture of empathy, thinking we're in a relationship, multi-pointed relationship, and how do we foster empathy, not just me being more empathic, but the other person and the whole community. So it's not just all on me for the responsibility. It's really we want to have the whole community, like those people who get triggered so easily. You know, the society needed to be creating space for them to be having empathy as a child and developing this, social trust. And there's a deficit, a deep deficit in the community that is creating, someone that is so mistrustful that, that the littlest thing can kind of set them off.
So not only are you taking responsibility for that empathy, but really holding everyone in that space where, okay, so you didn't get this empathy as a child, or you did, or whatever, but how do you get there? How does everyone get there to that place where we can have that culture where we could really hold everyone as meaning, as everyone as worth it, and really hold this culture?
And not putting it all on one person. You yourself have to be all responsible. There's a social responsibility of the culture, and how do we transform that culture? How do we transform the schools, the families, to kind of, and the social support systems to support everyone in developing those skills and that trust too.
Yeah. Just in your saying that, I had this image. Actually, I'm smiling a little, thinking of how beautiful that world would look like. That it, like, everyone matters in that way. But the focus is like, wow, this person's not caring about the situation. Like, how can we, like, how do we support them in really hearing what's happening right here?
Yeah, that's it. And then the other part that I think it was what Bill was talking about, diminution of self. And there's this notion that and I've been kind of playing with this, that the idea is that when we're being empathic, we're sort of putting ourselves back, or pulling ourselves back to be with the other person. But I think that that's not quite accurate, because we're putting our empathy forward. We're putting our presence forward. So it's not like we're shrinking, we're sort of expanding. We're not maybe putting our judgments and our, so forth out there, but we're putting our presence forward. So there is we are putting something forward. We're taking an active step to putting that presence forward. And so it's a different shift in terms of just saying, oh, I give up myself, sacrifice myself. We're actually putting something positive forward.
You're kind of sitting with that image of creating the culture of empathy. Actually is about filling space rather than pulling yourself back and basically cutting off a piece of yourself so you create it. It's actually, how do you help everyone fill that space between each other so they can really hear each other, rather than have them pull back so they can protect something that's not really creating that.
Yeah, though what we're pulling back is our blocks to empathy and bringing our empathy forward. So, and it's subtle, it's so that's, anyway. I feel heard. That was my time too.
Thank you very much. I am thinking now, since Varsha kind of mentioned it, and I've been thinking about it, what is the nature of the fact that when we're listening to someone, our tone goes to that question? Does that mean that we're actually listening enough? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't pick someone to hear me. Bill, can you listen?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Yeah. So I am really thinking about when I use a question to ask someone what's going on for them. Does that mean that I actually was listening to them? It's because I wouldn't use the tone of a question if I actually got what they were saying. Mm-hmm. I would inherently just be able to say it back. And I'm not judging myself or anything. I'm just saying that there's something about the nature of, can you listen only 95% versus 100 and it works? And I'm realizing that if you're going to listen, you have to listen 100%. It's not that those blocks that you put on yourself, you have to put them behind. to really connect, to really get there. Because for me, when I get in that mode where I'm asking questions rather than just reflecting back, I'm realizing I really didn't hear what the person said. And I'm asking the question because I want more clarification. And I'm realizing how frustrating that must be on a subconscious level to people, that, like, I just told you what's happening. Why are you asking me again? Like, I bared out my heart for you. Why didn't you catch it? Can you get that reflected back, please?
Sure. Well, I think that you're really you're using your own experience to affirm what Miller is saying in this chapter, in that when you just and this goes back to what you were saying earlier about the nuance of questions and how things can go south, and how making a statement is much more assuredness that you're there 100% with the person and then listening, whereas questions, again, as Miller said, can have that inherent judgment. And you're feeling very strongly that you've got to really commit 100% to doing it. I would say yes, in this case, using a statement instead of a question, but I also think to self-examine yourself to make sure that you're really, there 100%.
Yeah. Also, in realizing it reflected back to me, it's kind of making me think of the fact is that a lot of times, just literally, I can't be 100%. Like in my work, sometimes I'm doing therapy while I'm driving a car. I'm talking to the client while I'm driving them to the restaurant or to a bank or something. I better have a few percent on the road, and not 100% on the client, or else we're both going to die, So just like thinking like, I 100% is the way I want to, but just acknowledging that I can't do 100% all the time. I'm only human, and that's okay too. Just, working towards that real connection and that real sense of, accomplishment, or, accomplishing hearing someone is good enough for me.
So what I'm hearing is that when you heard it reflected back, that 100% almost seemed like too stern a task, and that might lead to some needless self-blame. There are times when you must split your attention, or you must, walk and chew gum or do whatever. And at that time, you should be empathetic with yourself, but also realizing where that goal is.
Yeah.
And okay, so I wasn't 100%. I was 97 today, and then look at that, and just try your best. But also I really hear self-love, taking care of, self-care.
All right, I'm complete. I feel heard. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we're at we're at what is it?
What do you want to do?
4:30, and we had the try it exercise. So shall we try a couple rounds of that for the people who haven't spoken at the second round? So
sure.
I don't know if anybody,